Okay. First of all, I wanted to ask you. I've read in a few different places that you yourself have been in several bands. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually true. In fact, I was yesterday. I saw the one of my old guitarists from the band I was in for the first time in 15 years, and he contacted me and asked me to that he wanted to get together. He lives here in Cincinnati, but I hadn't seen him forever, and he was so excited about Andy and the band and what's happened and all the rest of that. But I spent a lot of time yesterday with him reminiscing. But yeah, I was in a lot of punk bands in Cincinnati, and then bands that actually toured nationally. I was in a band called The Edge.
Awesome.
That he opened up for a number of what people consider major punk acts of that time. We opened up for Lord of the New Church. We opened for the Misfits. Actually, the Misfits at CBGB's in New York.
Wow.
And other punk bands that people, well-known punk bands that people would know. Stiff Little Fingers was one of my favorite bands, and we got an opportunity to open for them as well.
Oh, cool.
And I was also in a band called The Members, which was a pretty popular Cincinnati band. It was more of a bar band playing. We played punk songs as covers. We were the only band in that era who didn't do classic rock or contemporary or whatever. We'd be house band for a number of venues, and we would play punk songs. But classic punk, the Clash, the Pistols, Buzzcocks, the bands that a lot of the Jam, a lot of people do, and like kind of a pop punk, Ramones, that kind of stuff.
That's really cool. So obviously Andy was exposed to rock at a very young age, music in general.
Yeah, I was just wrapping that up when he was born, and just decided that when Andy was born, I decided I wanted to go get my master's degree instead of continuing to pursue music. So pretty much dropped it at that time. He obviously had audio recordings of my bands playing, and he had we made the Edge made an vinyl, an album, and so did the Members. So he had that, and he had video from that. So he knew that I was in bands. But most of the exposure that he had was the CDs and the VHS tapes that I had of various bands that I was really into, and he got to see them. And a big part of that was Kiss. I mean, I just had a really large collection of Kiss memorabilia and those kind of things, and that was what I think probably drew Andy to rock. Because at the time that he was into it, or that he first got into it, he was in the superhero phase. Where he was into Superman and Batman and pretty much anything like that. And then he saw Kiss, and they looked like superheroes to him. So that's probably where his initial attraction came. And musically, most of it was the stuff that I listened to. Generation X, Billy Idol, the Social Distortion, that kind of, the Damned, that was a big influence on him.
Okay. Can you describe for us the Biersack household when Andy was just a little one running around? Was he always up to something?
It's probably pretty normal. I mean, I know probably people would be surprised by that, but it was pretty normal. I mean, Andy was never a joiner in that he was always a little eclectic. He never, like, Andy was the kind of kid, even when he was really young, who would put on plays or shows or whatever for anybody and everybody who would come over to the house. He was just one of those kids who wanted to run out there and perform, whether you wanted to see it or not. And we had plenty of people over, but that was kind of one of the unique things about Andy when he was growing up, is that he had no sense of self-awareness that he might not be good. I mean, he always assumed that he was going to be great.
Right.
So there wasn't any fear.
That's great.
Some people get on stage and they're worried, and they kind of are concerned with how they're being viewed, and then they get caught up in that thought process when they're on stage, and they can't, and they almost get stage fright.
Right.
And Andy never had that. So even from a very early age, he would do that stuff, and he would make his own plays or movies, and he would have us film him and do like elaborate costumes and all that stuff. But all the while he was playing sports, and he was involved in all these sports things. And he was a hell of an athlete. I mean, I know it's hard to believe when people see him, especially considering the fact that he considers himself the clumsiest frontman in rock.
Right.
But he was just a unbelievably good hockey goalie.
And recently read that.
Just one of the best goalies in his age group, probably from the time he was like 9 or 10 all the way up into high school.
Wow. Yeah,
he would go on, he'd play in tournaments, and teams from St. Louis and Chicago, Detroit, even Canadian teams would call us and ask us if Andy would play goalie for them in these big tournaments.
Wow.
Yeah, and he won the national, there's a lot of bragging going on here, sorry.
Oh, no, that's what we're doing.
We are doing an interview, so he won the NHL hockey rules, which was a big tournament that they had in Detroit. He won their skills competition for goalies in his age group 2 years in a row.
That is incredible.
Yeah, he had a glove hand as a goalie like none I've ever seen. Nobody, we'd go to tournaments and they would say, I've never seen a kid that had that kind of quick reaction.
Uh-huh.
But he wasn't like a technically proficient goalie because we lived in Cincinnati and we didn't really know as much about it as, say, kids who go to goalie schools and everything in Quebec or, grow up doing that. Almost all of what he did was just based on to a certain extent, natural ability, and more importantly, just sheer will.
Yeah.
He was one of those kids that, he used to put in on the inside of his goalie equipment, be a warrior, or be a warrior today, and that was one of the things that we'd always talk about. Because there were some Cincinnati teams that he would play on that were not all that great. And they would play a team from Detroit or a team from Toronto or wherever, and those teams would just be ripping shots. He had to make 60 saves in a game.
Oh, my goodness.
And there was no way they were going to win because his team couldn't even get the puck past center ice or inline. He played ice and inline year-round.
Yeah.
But, they would lose like 3-0 or something.
Yeah.
Well, that was my thing was always, it doesn't matter what the score is. You just keep, busting it the whole game and don't worry about that. Your game is the next shot.
Right.
And that was kind of the way he approached things. And playing goalie like he did in hockey for all those years and being the center of attention and being the best player and everybody relying on him and everything else really prepared him for what he does now.
Absolutely.
There was a lot of stress. I mean, that's the one thing. I didn't miss it when he left hockey, and I didn't have to deal with because performing rock and roll is nothing compared to the stress that you have when your kid is playing hockey and facing 60 shots.
Wow, yeah, I guess.
And my wife and I were about to be churning before these games. And I helped coach some of the teams later on. But that's to end this long story. He was a heck of an athlete. He played baseball. He was the home run derby champ his final year that he played.
Wow.
And then he just stopped playing because he really got into hockey full time.
Uh-huh.
He won he went to a football camp. He never even played football, but he wanted to play football. So he went to just to see if he would like it.
Yeah.
He went to a football camp and he won the top lineman award.
Oh my
and
gosh.
he'd never played football before. And this was like a pretty prestigious football camp. It was like Princeton High School in Cincinnati, which is one of the better football high schools in the city or in the state. And David Fulcher, who used to be a Bengals defensive back who was on the Super Bowl team, he put this thing on. I believe Icky Woods was at it and everything else. This was, a few years ago, obviously. And, Andy he got an award downstairs.
Oh my God.
And then he just decided he didn't really want to play football.
Never mind.
He just kept playing hockey. So he never played football, but he's got an award for most outstanding lineman.
That's hilarious. Well, I'm glad you shared all of that because I bet lots of people don't know that.
They don't. I mean, I think ESPN, the magazine, did an article on Andy about him being a hockey player.
Uh-huh.
He talked about that and everything else, but, he's not, when they're asking him about hockey, he's not going to talk about what a great player he was. He's going to talk about who he liked as players and how that impacted him as a musician.
Uh-huh.
Andy was one of those kids that, even though he was really good at it, he you just knew that that was not what he wanted to do in the end. So everybody else was talking about possibly getting college scholarships or playing junior hockey in Canada, or because the level that he was playing, the kids were really good. Andy was talking about being a rock star, and he would wear Misfit stickers on his goalie helmet and like vinyl decals of Kiss or The Damned or whatever else on his goalie pads. He had long hair hanging out. It was, when he said he wanted to start his own band, and he was ready to start his own band, and he didn't want to play hockey anymore, it really didn't come as a big shock to me. It was just kind of like, okay, this is the natural transition that you're going to make. You're going to go from that, which is all that you could do as a little kid. You know, you didn't have an outlet for that. You can't be in a rock band and run a hard rock band when you're 10 or 11 or 12 or even, you know, I mean, he was 15. He was going to clubs and playing in front of, 1,000 people, and 15 years old. Everybody in his band was adults. But he's 15 standing out front and, fronting a hard rock band. So
I'm not scared at all.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So my next question was, did you always think you'd be a performer? But I think you pretty much answered that one.
Yeah. That's why when people say, did it come as a shock to you? I think most of the people that would ask me that would be the people that knew Andy when he played hockey.
Yeah, probably.
They were like shocked. They couldn't believe it. They thought it was like the biggest waste, and everybody was like, "What do you mean he's not playing anymore?" And I was like, "He doesn't want to play anymore. I mean, he's got something else that he wants to do."
Yeah.
I think people thought I was nuts because we spent thousands of dollars on hockey equipment over the years, going to these tournaments and everything else. But they didn't really know that I didn't, and Andy never considered it to be what he was going to do. We just looked at it as something to keep him busy and something that he could be on center stage. That's what he needed. He craved everybody watching him and looking at him and being the center of attention. And hockey goalie, particularly in the situations he was in, where Cincinnati teams were his teams he was playing with primarily, and they weren't as good as the other teams, he was the center of attention. He was half the game.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Okay, so you told us, that was my next question was some other interests that he had besides music, and now I know hockey. Did he have any other stuff that he did when he was a kid?
Yeah, he's very artistic. He would draw a lot. He used to, he would do comic books. He would do his own little fanzines for the sports he was in, or the team, or bands. He would try. And Andy was preparing for all this stuff. He used to do logos for a band called Biersack that didn't exist.
Well. And
start doing all this stuff, years before he ever played.
Because you just
the first show Andy ever did, I don't want to skip on you here, but I will say comic books was a big thing. Batman and a lot of comic stuff. He was really, really into that. And that was probably, if I was going to talk about Andy's primary hobby or interest, it would be that. It would be comics or, that kind of superhero kind of stuff. He's like a collector, and he loves that stuff, particularly Batman. That's his, and that's something that he and I share together. That's something real special to both of us, because when he was really little, I got him his first comic books, and he was so excited about that. He was really small, and then every time a Batman movie would come out or whatever, that we would go the day that the movie came out, the premiere day. That would be our thing. We would go together, and we would spend a lot of time at Toys R Us and other places looking at finding the perfect action figures that he wanted. And, and when he was a real little kid, he used to like pro wrestling. That was the other thing that he used to, because there's a certain element to that also translates to superheroes and rock and roll. When you think about it. And so the irony to me always is that Andy, like for example, pro wrestling, they used Black O'Brien's song for a recent pay-per-view.
Yes, they did. We saw that.
WWE did. That is karma. Because Andy used to have wrestling rings in his room and play with those action figures and go to the shows and everything else, and he was totally into it, when he was a kid growing up.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. That should happen as far as I'm concerned, because of the amount of time that he all dedicated or supported that. Hockey. Now I'm watching hockey games, and I see Black O'Brien's video and their music used as bumper music for the outro and intros for commercials on the NHL games.
Awesome, I didn't know that.
On Fox Sports primarily, all over the country, different Fox Sports. And people are like, "Oh, is that cool?" And it is cool, but it almost seems like it's karma. You know, like,
exactly.
That's what it should be.
Yep.
Because Andy is like such a dedicated hockey player and played for so many years. Now, NASCAR I was happy about. We've never really... that game was a shock, because neither one of us was really into NASCAR, except Andy had what the hell's the name of the guy? Mark Martin. He had his car, like a mini, really nice car, too, in his room, because Mark Martin's number was 6. So that's...
There you go.
You know, at least we could point to that. In some fashion, Andy supported NASCAR, but NASCAR doesn't normally, you don't really equate that with theatrical hard rock.
No, you don't.
So yeah, it's you know, his primary interests, ironically, have always kind of tied in together: music, rock, comics, that kind of stuff, and also like pro wrestling and organized sports. Those things. To this day, he still follows the Bengals, obviously, because he grew up here and we used to go to the games all the time together, and the Reds. And I think he's become a decent fan of the LA Kings now, when he's home in LA. Because he's still always going to play hockey. His thing is he told ESPN that someday he wants to get in one of those Hollywood, rec leagues or whatever, where it's all like celebrities or whatever.
Right.
He thinks that he could hold his own against those guys. He doesn't know.
I bet you.
So it's been a long time since he put the pads on and played.
Right. I'm guessing that you guys must have gone to a lot of concerts when he was growing up.
Yeah. You know, when the thing first started, you mean as far as taking him or going to his
Yeah, just
shows?
while he was growing up, I just imagine you guys going to, well, especially Kiss, of course.
Yeah, the first show we ever took him to, another thing of karma. It's really weird. Billy Idol. It's the first show we ever took him to. Was Billy Idol at Kings Island Amusement Park. Billy Idol was playing what they call the Timberwolf Theater, which is an outdoor amphitheater at an amusement park. And we got the tickets because by then Andy was starting to really get into music and different bands and punk bands and everything else. And I took him to a used record store that was relatively close to where we lived, and we used to go there all the time. This lady that was working there just loved Andy because he was so interested in the Sex Pistols and the Clash and all the rest of that stuff, and she couldn't believe that this little, at the time, blonde-haired, kid or whatever would come in, and he looked angelic as all get out. But he'd be so into it. He was so knowledgeable about it.
Yeah.
She was taken by Andy and he had passes or tickets to the show, and she gave them to us so that we could take Andy to see Billy Idol. It was really like the first day before he started junior high school was the very first concert that he went to.
Awesome.
And then later on, I took him to see Marilyn Manson. He saw Danzig and Trivium. And what I try to always do when he would go to these shows, aside from seeing the big shows like Kiss and Motley Crue and Aerosmith and stuff, which I would take him to too. But I would try, when there would be a club show, I'd always try to make sure that he met the guys in the band. Not to meet them like the Beast, shove my way in there because I didn't really want to do that kind of stuff, but just for him to wait and meet them and then find out that they weren't superhuman. They were just guys who were just like him, older, but worked at it, and that it's possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he met the guys from Trivium, I remember that. And the guy, and this was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. Trivium hadn't really made their mark yet. They were supporting Danzig. And they were really nice guys, and they were talking about how, his dad, the guy, the lead singer from Trivium, I can't remember his name right now, but how he had taken him to shows, and he was like, it's really cool how your dad's taking you to shows. And Andy, probably 13 years old at the time, or 14, whatever he was, he was like, well, I'm going to be a rock star. I'm going to, And they were like, okay, buddy. So now they're playing the same festival,
Right, and now they're going, hey, remember that kid?
We probably saw each other at Donington, or at in these major German festivals, Trivium and everything else. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Probably the most interesting karma thing is when Andy was really young. He was like 10 or 11 years old. He was really starting on, I told you, he's really starting to get into music, and of course Kiss was his primary thing. I had tons of VHS tapes, and I had the poster books, the tour books, because I had gone to see them so many times, and it was just almost like superheroes to him. So he begged me to take him to a Kiss convention in Indianapolis. And I was like, okay, I've never been to one of those. I consider Kiss conventions just this side of Star Trek conventions. You know, it's cool. I mean, if you like it.
Of course.
It wasn't, but I'm just saying it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to do. But he was asking me, and I was like, okay, let's do it. So we drove to a Kiss convention, and Eric Singer was at the convention, because at the time that we went to the convention, Kiss had reunified with the original lineup. So now Eric Singer, who has since come back into the fold and has been their drummer for years since, at the time he was kind of the last man out. He and Bruce Kulick were just kind of on the outside looking in. So Andy loved Revenge, which was the album that Kiss put out. That was like one of the first albums that he ever bought with his own money, or that we gave him money and that he bought. And he was really excited about meeting Eric Singer, so I was like, okay, fine, let's go. And we went to the thing, and they did a karaoke contest. And you have to understand how incredibly bad the vast majority of the people are that jump up on stage. And Oh, it's just brutal. It's just brutal. Okay, and this place was packed. It was a ballroom, but it was just packed. And people are getting up on stage, and it's like, oh my god! But of course, everybody's kind of laughing and egging them on. Well, Andy is like, I want to do that. Now he had to be 9 or 10.
Oh my goodness!
And so I think this is. Let me see. I'm trying to figure this out. Kiss reunited in '96 or '97, something like that. So this might have been the Psycho Circus tour. It might have been like '98 or '99. It's probably like 8 or 9. Now that I think about it, he jumps up on stage. He does this Dr. Love and Christine 16.
Wow!
And he's doing it with all the moves, the Gene boot moves, and all the rest of that stuff. He's watching the video probably a zillion times.
Right.
And he sounds so good. It was hilarious. And people are going nuts. There's like tribute bands that are standing around. There's other people. The tribute bands liked him so much that they invited him to come on stage. This one tribute band. And sing Dr. Love with them.
Wow.
So he gets on stage, he does it. So then Eric Singer's fielding questions, and Andy asks some he raises his hand because, Andy always wanted to be the center of attention. So he asked some question to Eric about Revenge, probably, I guess. I can't recall what the question was. At any rate, Eric goes, "You're the kid that was up on stage, aren't you?" And Andy was laughing, he goes, "Hey, you're going to be a rock star someday." And so that to me, it's like, when you look back on it, it was funny as hell then. It was prophetic as hell now.
Yeah, exactly.
That was that was kind of, and I think that's when Andy kind of knew that that's what he wanted to do. Because
Sealed the deal.
If you've got kids, and you know that when they're doing something that they're good at, and they'll have like that, almost like the smile on their face, like, wow, I'm good at this.
Right, when they realize.
You could see the look in his face when people were just kind of going batshit for him up on stage at this thing. Like, oh man, I want to do this some more.
It's not just mom and dad that like me.
Yeah. So it was, that was if I were to look at one thing and say that might have been the one thing where it was fairly clear what he was going to wind up doing, it was that moment when you thought to yourself, yeah, there's a pretty good chance of that happening. Now that was years before he actually started the band. He was like 9 years old.
Wow.
So there was that whole hockey thing that happened for 6 years after that.
Yeah.
So I think that was, I don't know, I don't call it biding time, but it was just, what are you going to do? He had an opportunity when he was in LA to actually do the Disney thing. Because he went and he was at the School of Creative Performing Arts when he was a freshman, and he got discovered by some talent agent that was there, and they invited him to go to I guess they call it a talent expo. It's really a come on. It's like parents who are dying for their kids to become starlets or stars or whatever, or models or whatever, and they parade their kids out in front of these people who
Yeah.
allegedly are going to help them or going to manage them or become successful. And they pay money to go to these things. They pay big bucks to be at these hotels for a weekend and show their kids off. Okay?
Right.
I didn't know anything about that shit until we found out from this agent who came to School of Creative Performing Arts that they wanted Andy to go to this. Well, my first reaction was, well, no, we're not really interested in that.
Yeah.
But they said, no, we'll pay for him. We'll pay for you or your wife, one of the two of you, to go with him to this thing and represent us.
Wow.
So then we were like, okay, let's see what happens.
Uh-huh.
Andy goes to this thing, and he winds up winning the top teen actor, top teen model, and top talent.
Damn.
And he gets like, I don't know, about 20-some offers from talent agencies and managers in Hollywood who wanted to represent him. As an actor, though. Which kind of threw me for a loop because I didn't think he'd only been in a couple of plays by then. At School of Creative Performing Arts, he was the lead in those plays, but I didn't consider him to be, we're talking about going to Hollywood and acting in movies or television.
Yeah.
It wasn't, at any rate, we went out to Hollywood and we literally took cabs from management agency to management agency, one after another, talking to them to see who was most interested in signing him or who wanted to, who we wanted to select.
Uh-huh.
And one of the places that we went to that he eventually wound up signing with, they asked me what I saw for him, and I said, I see him as being a rock star. And they're kind of like put off by it because that didn't really fit what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And so they said, what if we could get him? They have at the time they were representing a lot of the clients who were on the Disney roster, Hannah Montana, that kind of stuff. And they were looking at the possibility of having a character who would be more like the edgy rocker kind of guy or whatever, and doing something like that. And then they would be able to
work it in.
Kind of move that character in the direction of being a pop star, but like an edgier pop star,
Right.
And you got to remember, he was like 14 years old at the time, so that's kind of a really exciting idea to normal people. Not to Andy, he didn't care anything about that. He was 14 and had already figured out that wasn't going to be good for his eventual career as a rock god.
Yes, exactly.
So he just didn't do it. Now, most people don't know that. They think that Andy was somehow created out of a laboratory or something, and this was processed by some record label, and that they picked these 4 other guys because of how they looked, and all this is just a load of crap that most people make up because they can't deal with the fact that these guys were fortunate enough to all come together, and that Andy had planted the seed for 3 years through social networking, and literally playing in a band here in Cincinnati under the name Blackfoot Brides, to get them to the point where when they all came together with all their various talents, things were, worked out.
That's so cool. I've just noticed, I don't, not met you or anything, but just seeing how you interact on Twitter. Mostly, I'm not on MySpace that much, but I go on there and look at your blog sometimes. You are, musically or otherwise, one of the most supportive dads I've ever seen. And I was lucky enough to have one of those, but so many kids don't. Were you guys always super close?
Yeah, well, Andy's the only child.
Yeah.
And his, and as he said before in interviews, it was I don't want to call it a siege on our family or on him when he was younger because of the way he looked. He grew up in a relatively, I won't call it small-minded, but not exactly the most liberal of communities here in Cincinnati, and particularly like a heavy Catholic community. And he was different. And he wasn't conventional in the way he looked, and the way and the way he talked too. Because I don't know, you've seen interviews with Andy. They go all the way back to when he was 14 or 15 years old on YouTube, and you can see that this is not your typical 14-year-old.
Oh no!
And it used to freak people out. It freaked the teachers out. They thought he was some kind of a smartass or something, but he was just highly intelligent kid.
Yeah.
Highly intelligent kid who was tested for mental retardation, by the way. But highly intelligent because he didn't care anything about the testing.
Yeah.
They put him in they tested him for mental retardation, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
Wow.
Because I mean, it's obvious if you talk to him that he's pretty sharp. It's
so
just
not.
he didn't have the in certain classes he just didn't have a great interest.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think necessarily that he didn't have that interest when he initially started in school. I just think that like he would switch from one school to the next based upon like he was in elementary and then he would go to middle and everything else. But when you go from one school system, if you're in public school or private school, to another, and you're not all on the same page, it's probably a duty of the teacher or the whatever to make sure that there are people who aren't get caught up or figure out a way to catch them up or change them. And really what we discovered was some teachers are just so jaded, they ridicule these kids.
Right.
They make them feel like there's something wrong with them because they're not on the same page as everybody else instead of figuring out a way to help them get to that point. They target these kids.
Right.
And they target them in class as far as them, acting like you're a dumbass. They target them by snide little comments about the way they dress or the shirt that they're wearing or the makeup that they have on or whatever the hell it is, boys and girls.
Yeah.
And then when you're trying to deal with it as a parent, the school will say things like, well, if they didn't dress that way, they wouldn't have to, then they wouldn't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
I mean, we're talking about kids who are getting abused physically and verbally and otherwise, emotionally during the course of the day, and the response that the school would give would be, well, it's their fault. If they wouldn't dress that way, then they wouldn't have to do it. They wouldn't have to deal with it. Which is such a crazy concept when you think about what the schools are supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
They're encouraging lemmings. They're encouraging people that go along with everybody else, and if you don't, then you're, instead of being a free thinker or somebody who actually is creative, they don't like that. Yep, which would be the exact opposite of school in many, many places, but it really wasn't here. So, yeah, our relationship came about, obviously, because he's our only kid, and Amy and I could very easily dedicate our time to whatever Andy was interested in. Yeah. But also because, we would wake up on a Sunday morning and I'd go outside to get the paper and there would be eggs all over the side of our house or toilet paper in our trees or tampons with ketchup in them in our mailbox or smeared on our doors and chalk on our sidewalk saying faggot or kill yourself or whatever the hell it was. And that was, for a while that was pretty routine, actually. I had to get the hose out and clean it off. Yeah. And he'd wake up and my wife would be saying, he'd say, where's Dad? Oh, he's out there. They did it again. And he'd be like, I'm going to go out there. And I'd be like, no, stay in here because I don't want them to see. Because they're probably driving to church this morning with their parents.
Exactly.
And I don't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me out here. So I'll clean this stuff off, and they'll drive by, and it'll be like it never happened. That's the way I want to approach it.
Yeah.
Probably the same kids a couple of years later were driving by the house in their cars, telling everybody how that's where Andy Six lives, and I was his best friend. So.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's so annoying. And that happens all the time.
I mean, when everything is kind of channeled or focused on you, and you feel all that, you as a family have and a lot of parents do. It's not, what I tell people is stuff that they're already feeling. I just think that a lot of times it's helpful for people to know that they're not the only ones that are going through this.
Yeah. And
then they can see how Andy came out of the other side of this, and he made it work for him. But the important thing to me when Andy was going through this, and when he got to the point where he had a forum to express it, was that he used that forum intelligently and appropriately. That he tried to connect with kids who are going through that stuff now and try to help them. And that's why I think probably maybe the difference between BVB and most of the bands that are out there.
Right.
And you can talk about the makeup and the theatrics, and that's what the guys like. They like that. They want to put on a show. It's really not aimed at anything other than that's kind of what they want to do. But the message, the lyrics, particularly, are Andy's his feelings and how he wants other people to not, like he used to worry about whether or not other kids liked him or thought he was cool or what he, initially. That was like one of those things. And he'd be like, why doesn't anybody, why, you know, I tried this, I tried that. And then he got to a point where he just didn't care anymore. And that's when he started to become a pretty decent artist, where he was, you know, if it hadn't been for all that crap, he probably never would have learned to play guitar and write songs. He probably never would have focused on a business plan, if you will, for how he wanted to get his band started and everything. Andy was smart enough, even as a 14 or 15-year-old, to not only use social networking like nobody had ever done before to create this Andy Six character, but he also branched out and did those videos with his friend Chance, the Captain Cold
those
videos,
are so
Chance
fun.
and Andy videos. And when he would do shows, he had his own silk screen thing that he bought and did, and he made his own shirts.
Awesome.
And he would go to shows, and he would give them out to all the girls that he'd see at the shows. And they would all have Black Veil Bride shirts on. And then we would videotape this stuff and everything, and the whole crowd, the kids up in the front, and everything else would all be wearing BVB stuff. You put that on the internet, and that makes it look even bigger. That makes it even look more legitimate. You know, you're talking about a 15-year-old, but people don't know that.
Right.
And they're like, wow, who's this band? And look at all the people that are there. And, you know, we would put these big giant skull brides on the sides of the stage, and that we buy at the horror.com and everything, or these floodlights from the highways that we would buy at the Lowe's store, and the smoke machines and everything. Nobody was doing that. It was so, most of these club shows, it was so understated because everybody since Nirvana has been trying not to put on a good show.
I know.
Or to look like they don't care.
Right.
And then these bands that you would see for years and years and years, including all these Cookie Monster bands, the kids that liked them were guys, and guys only.
Right.
I wouldn't see girls going to see these bands because they didn't want to get kicked in the head by a Doc Martin.
Exactly.
You know, or a shit boot or something. I mean, there wasn't a lot of girls. When BVB got started, and they were playing shows in Cincinnati, and they were playing, and they would only play venues that were large, and only once every 2 or 3 weeks, because kind of a plan in place that we want to play a lot of shows, because every show we played, we wanted it to be packed.
Exactly.
We wanted plenty of time to promote it. And we wanted the band to, it wasn't about making money at that time, it was about notoriety. It was about creating an image that we wanted everybody to see. Right. And the guys that were in the band in those days were basically just, they weren't very good musicians. There was one guy, Chris Stewart, who was a really good guitarist, and he co-wrote all the songs with Andy back in those days. But the other guys, some of them didn't even have their own equipment. Wow. Andy had to buy Eddie had bass cab and a bass, and one guy would use that. The other guy would use Andy's guitar and one of Andy's, regular amps. So we would rehearse. They would all rehearse here at the house. Andy would have to sometimes go pick them up, like drive and pick them up after he got his driver's license, and bring them back here, even though the rehearsal was here, and then take them back home. Because that's other, like I said, other than like Chris Stewart, who's, it's not ironic. I guess it makes sense that the only person in the band who's still playing music to this day and in a band that's got on a record label is Chris Stewart. Right. He's the guitarist for Star City Meltdown, and he's still a great friend of Andy's, and he's become a really good friend of the rest of the band, the rest of the guys that are, in Black Veil Brides. Right. But he was talented, and he had drive, and he did what he needed to do. But the funny part was they were the only ones that were under 18. Everybody else in the band was a grown-up. Yeah. They were in their 20s. But they were pot smoking, whatever, didn't have jobs, didn't have, Right. And they were just waiting around for Andy to tell them what to do. And he would dress them, put their makeup on them and everything else because he needed a band so that he could, perform and he could showcase. Right. When he moved to L.A., 6 days after his 18th birthday, the guys that were in that band, and they knew about it, they knew he was going to leave anyway, they acted like, we don't give a shit. Fine, whatever. No, you're never going to make it. Whatever. In fact, the guy who was the booking agent at the time, a guy named Terry Blaze, he called me up, like right before Andy left and said, well, I understand he's going to L.A., but you better get him some singing lessons because he can't sing and he's never going to make it and all the rest of that. Which, ironically, I've never, and no one in our family, and nor Andy, has ever claimed he's Pavarotti. Nobody has ever said he's the greatest singer, he's not Ronnie James Dio, he's not Rob Halford. He knows what his limitations are.
Right.
But, you know, Mick Jagger wasn't the greatest singer in the world either.
You're right.
Or Bruce Springsteen, if you really think about it.
I actually was just talking about that a couple days ago.
You know, I mean, that's not really what it's all about.
Exactly.
You know, Andy is, he's a personality. He's a front man. He's pretty much what a rock star, looks and sounds like, whether it's on stage or off. He knows, he just has that, whatever it is, that it factor. And he has since he's been, you know, a lot younger.
Right.
He knows how to command a stage. He knows how to get people to watch him. So yeah, I think there was an interview recently where he said, "Yeah, I'm not a great singer, but I'm the right singer for this band."
Exactly.
And that's what we always said is that. But this guy Terry Blaze told me that, so the whole band that was left except for Chris Stewart, they all decided they were going to reform or do something else, and they got a new singer. And they were, oh my God, this new singer is the greatest thing. We didn't care what. Andy went to LA, didn't even have a band. He's just taking a chance.
Yeah.
You know, it was a gutsy move to make.
Yes, it was.
And he would have gone with Chris, but Chris was 17. Chris was even younger than Andy, and he couldn't go. So Andy goes to LA, and long story short, he winds up meeting Patrick Fogarty on the movie set of Halloween 2 because Andy's girlfriend at the time, Scout Taylor Compton, was in the movie, or she was like the lead actress in the movie. And Patrick's working on special features. And Patrick says to Andy, who sees Andy and the way Andy looks, and says, "Oh, I see we were in a band." And Andy goes, "Yeah." But at the time, Andy really doesn't have a band. He has himself. He has songs that he recorded and copyrighted with Chris, which they have on iTunes, but aren't selling all that well because they don't have a video out. And, you know, and they're not playing, obviously, anymore because the band doesn't really exist.
Right.
But Andy bluffs him and says, "Yeah." And Patrick says, "All right, I'd love to make your first video." So Andy called me up and said, "All right, I got an opportunity to make a video." And Patrick, this guy's not going to charge me for his services. We just have to be able to rent the sound studio and the techs and all the rest of that stuff. But Patrick's going to shoot it, and he's going to edit it, and he's going to produce it, all the rest of that for me. And it's going to cost me $5,000 to do it.
Wow.
So Andy has some money that he had left over in what they call a Coogan account because he did commercial work when he was in LA. Remember I told you that he went to LA to pick managers and everything else? Well, about 2 or 3 months later, he and Amy went to Los Angeles for a couple of months for what they call pilot season, and they auditioned for TV shows and did commercials and everything else. So he's got money that he hasn't been able to touch while he's a juvenile that is waiting for him in California.
Right.
In a Brinks, I think that's what it was. I can't remember what the account was, but it was, you know, he's waiting for him. So he's able to get it. So he's got a certain amount of money he probably needs to live on, and then he's asking me for more money. So I sent him a good quantity of that $5,000, and he's going to make the video. So he doesn't have a band. So he recruits Scout's friend Sandra, who's in like some kind of hardcore punk band, to be the drummer in the video. And his friend Chris Blueser, a guy that he knew from a band in Dayton, and I can't recall the name of the band, but he goes by Chris Hollywood. He has that guy as the guitarist. Now he just has to find a bass player. So they call some guy, and they talk to somebody. They're trying to find somebody to be the bass player, and this guy agrees to do it. So they're all set. They got the studio. They're gonna record the video. They picked actors to be the kid to be like the personification of Andy as a middle school or a junior high kid. All the rest of that. So they're ready to go with this. And the kid that's the bass player calls the morning of and says, "My girlfriend's dog." I'm not trying to laugh about a dog dying, but this just sounds like the most pathetic excuse. "My girlfriend's dog died and I can't make it." So so it's not like you can go back on it, and he's the only one that really practiced or knew how to pretend to play the song. Although they probably could have pulled anybody, and if they wouldn't have put much of a focus on him or whatever. So he calls me up. He's like in a panic. "What do I do? What should I do?" I said, "Just go ahead and make the video anyway." anyway. Who cares? It's not like everybody's. I said, the only people that are going to give two shits about whether there's a bass player in or not are musician types, and you don't care about them anyway. You're not.
Right.
This band will never, ever appeal to musician types. It'll only appeal to people who like rock and roll and don't think they're better than everybody else.
Exactly.
Or want everybody to be impressed with how much knowledge they have about music. Which, by the way, eventually was the only people that cared that there wasn't a bass player in the video. You know, so there were dumb people that would say, well, they should they need to put some bass in this song. It's like, there is. Okay, it's not, and it's a double guitar thing. They had two guitars that were recorded by Chris. So it's not like this video definitely represents what the band would look like. It was just a vehicle for Andy.
Right.
And then, so they put Knives and Pens out in June of 2009, and I don't know, it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, they had 1 million views of it.
Damn.
I know, it was crazy, because the videos they have out now, that they put out, well, Rebel Love Song, it's been out for 4 weeks, and it's barely at 1 million views. Now, back in those days, there was only one way for anybody to see it. It was on their channel and nobody was copying it.
Right.
Now they put a video out and it's 50 zillion different places you could actually view it.
Yeah.
So, but that video starts generating more and more interest. And that's what leads to record labels starting to look at the band, and then eventually them getting an offer from Standby Records in Cleveland.
Awesome. So far, well, first, have you heard the new album? I'm sure you have.
EP?
Yeah.
Or the Set the World on Fire?
No, the EP. That's.
Oh yeah. I've heard the rough mixes of the EP. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't heard the final version though. I just heard the initial rough mix.
Okay.
I've heard Rebel Love Song.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've heard Rebel Yell.
Right.
I keep saying Rebel Love Song because this is probably something that's not for print, but I'll just tell you, the EP will include, I've been told, the long version of the Rebel Love Song video.
Oh, cool.
Because I think they made an 8-minute version of it, like the whole story. You see a lot more in it.
Oh, good.
Than what's that? So I think that's what the plan is that when you buy it, because it's going to be digitally, you're also going to get the video, the Rebel Love Song video, and I think it's going to be in the long format.
Awesome.
And then I also believe there's going to be some other little goodies digitally that people are going to get with that, whether they be pictures of the band in concert or some other things. I'm not really sure what the whole thing is, but I do know that they're trying to add a few other things. iTunes contacted them and was like, why the hell are you guys selling all these physical CDs? No other band that's out there selling that's got the numbers that you guys do is selling more physical CDs than iTunes. You're the only ones. And so I guess iTunes decided they wanted this, and they wanted to promote it and feature it and everything else. So as we get closer to Christmas, I would venture to say that iTunes will be the ones who will be pushing it and promoting it. Up to now, it's just kind of been like little teasers here and there, but
yeah.
And when people say, well, when is it going to be? I think it really is going to be the day after Christmas.
That's what I was going to ask.
Because it's on iTunes. It's not going to be a physical CD, so
right.
You know, they're not. What their thing is that people will get gift cards for iTunes, or they'll have whatever, and then they'll be able to buy the thing. So they'll let people know. It's not like they're gonna keep it a secret because they don't want. If people have expendable income and they want to spend it around Christmas time, they're not going to want them to spend it before they know the Black O'Bride's CD or their EP is coming out. But,
right.
Yeah, it's the 3 great songs. Coffin is unbelievably good.
Is it?
That their original song in there, I think is one of the best songs they've ever written.
Uh-huh.
They just didn't have time to truly work on it the way they wanted to before they released Set the World on Fire.
Okay.
And I haven't heard Unholy with Zach Wild's guitar solo on it yet.
I want to hear that.
I know, I'm really looking forward to it because the version that we had, normally when we hear the demos, they have the guitar solos on too. Uh-huh. But they left the guitar solo out, so it's funny to hear a song where you expect to hear the guitar solo, and all you hear is dum 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 dum, and that would be the spot where you would just. It's like 8 bars of that in a row. It's kind of funny when you listen to it.
It's like, okay.
You really realize how important that is in a song if you don't have it.
what would you say is your favorite BB song ever, out of everything?
All the ones that they've done.
Yeah.
Up to now, I would definitely say "Savior."
Yeah.
Is my favorite song because it's very personal and it means a lot to Andy, and also because I know where his head and his heart were when he wrote it, because it's really a homage to the fans and to the band.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's a very, very personal song. There are other songs that he's written. There's one song in particular that I can't really tell you what it was spurred on by, but there's one song in particular off the Least Issues Wounds album that he wrote the lyrics to that song immediately after he went through hell, and we all went through hell when the former band member just went online and just started just telling all kinds of bullshit lies, just ridiculous things, and the band still hadn't released their first album, and their situation was still somewhat tenuous, and it was a lot of time and effort and work and everything else that we had to put in to refute all of this just ridiculous lies that were made up by this guy who was bitter that he was let go from the band. And so Andy wrote the lyrics to that song, and when I first heard it, I was like, "Oh my God!" Because it was angry and it was good. I mean, the lyrics were just it was veiled, so it's hard for people to actually tell that's what he was writing. But if you know, you can probably look back on that album and figure out which song it was.
Okay,
that's
I'm going to do that. And you know what? I bet you anything that my daughter can tell me without even. She probably already knows. That child.
It's interesting because most people think, like when the reviews came out and they would talk about that song, they would say, they honestly, the people that were reviewing it or reading it or whatever, they didn't have a clue. They would say, well, it sounds like he's complaining. It sounds like he's whining. It sounds like he was writing that directly to one person.
Wow.
And if you know that and you read and you hear the lyrics or you read those lyrics, you're like, oh man, he was giving it to him. Yeah, but the band doesn't, they don't want to give that guy any more publicity. He'd already done so much negative things that they had to overcome.
Yeah.
He claimed that he wrote all the songs, which is freaking ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
It was just so, he was putting those songs on iTunes he was putting them on iTunes when they were, like, when he was in the band and they were starting to write them, and they had, like, the original recorded versions that they did on what they call Pro Tools or just regular recordings that they were doing as they were writing them. And he put them on there as a finished thing, and he dubbed his vocals over the top of Andy's, but you could still hear Andy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was a nightmare. And then, and he claimed it and all these other things, and you'd be like, oh my God.
That's just
sad.
And then,
then Set the World on Fire comes out. He has nothing to do with that. And that album is the top 20 instead of the top 40.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where at the time that you're dealing with it, it's just like being a kid. At the time that you're a kid and you're dealing with this stuff, it seems like the worst possible situation. It seems like it's so almost impossible for you to see how you're going to get your way out of it. Because that's what you're living in at that time.
Right.
But then, as you get older, as time eventually, as the old adage was, heals all wounds, and that's kind of what happens, is that the next step and the next progressive thing is that they put out Set the World on Fire, and I would argue that anybody that listens to those two albums, that Set the World on Fire is a vastly superior album than We 60's Wounds.
Yeah. Wow. That's just really sad that somebody can't just have their own thing, or, has to try to steal somebody else's hard work.
Well, I mean, I think that there's two ways of handling things. We know that in life. That some people handle things, they don't burn their bridges, and they handle things professionally, and they hope that by doing so that they will that will be advantageous. Mm-hmm. And there's other people that don't have the coping skills and the ability to do those things, and when that happens to them, they just lash out, and they lash out in the most immature, childish type of ways. And years later, here we are, several years later, and I'm sure that person regrets it. But there's other people that have had contact with Black Veil Brides that have left the band, or are no longer part of the band, who are still in bands and doing well and are supported by Black Veil Brides. Case in point, Sandra. She's the original drummer.
Yeah.
She didn't want to be doing what Black Veil Brides was doing because they were moving more towards the metal sound and look and image and everything else. She felt more comfortable doing the punk or the heart, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Also, I don't know necessarily. She probably realized she wasn't going to be able to do what Black Veil Brides needed from her as a drummer. I mean, to give her credit, she probably understood that they weren't looking for a punk drummer. They were looking for the next Tommy Lee.
Right.
And when you look at what they got, I think they did get the next Tommy Lee.
I do too.
So I mean, that was. But getting back to my point, she handled it like a pro.
Exactly.
And she winds up getting in Modern Day Escape, which is a band that tours and plays Warped Tour and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And she's still playing. All she had to do was not be a complete and total dumbass and assassinate any future opportunities. When they play a tour, or when they put a record out, or when they do anything, the guys in the band send tweets out to the BVB fans saying, support Sandra.
I've seen that.
She maintained a relationship with them that's based upon respect.
Right.
The same thing with Chris Stewart. Chris Stewart was Chris Stewart was, I'm on this. Okay. That was my wife saying, don't use up all your phone minutes. And I was like, that's why I had you call me the home phone.
Okay.
Chris Stewart, he's the guy that wrote Knives and Pens with Andy, and up to this point, I guess you'd say, their most notable song. I wouldn't say most successful because it never got played on the radio, and now all their songs are getting played on the radio frequently. But he maintained a professional attitude about the whole thing, and how he even went on tour with the band as their guitar tech on a tour. And he made friends with them, and they included him in things. And then when the time was, there was an opportunity for him to slide into a band that was on the same label as Black Veil Brides. The guys in the band and myself, we were instrumental in getting Chris that position because he wasn't an asshole. I mean,
right.
It's not that hard of a thing. It's not that difficult to be civil and try to be professional. People and this other guy, he had a mental defect. And I think he had some other issues, and it wound up being to his detriment. I have no idea whether he ever made any more music after that. But the way he made it sound, he was the creative genius and the force behind Black Veil Brides and this and that. And as we see, Black Veil Brides continues to become one of the more notable and popular rock bands. And that guy, I don't know if anybody will ever hear from him again.
Right. And that's what actually goes right into my next question is how incredible their following is for Andy and the band as a whole. Are you ever still, I'm sure you're kind of used to it by now, but are you ever just overwhelmed with the support and love that the Army shows your son and the band?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't overwhelmed or like amazed, thankful, grateful. It's, I'm proud, I guess, would be the thing. And I'm not necessarily proud of Andy and the band. I am, but not as proud as I am of the kids who are a part of this. Yeah. Because it's not just about music. It's not just about an image or a rock band. This band is completely different, and their fan base is completely different to that. This isn't Slipknot with a bunch of masks on and everybody's looking at them going, oh, that's interesting, you see. Right. I'm not ripping on Slipknot, but there's a message that Black Veil Brides has that no other rock band has thrown out there. Right. And a real message, and a sincere message. Yeah, not a bullshit, I had a tough life and all the rest of that. This is a message based upon nothing more than getting people to understand that no one dictates who you are. Exactly. No one has the right to tell you that you don't look right or that you don't like the right things or whatever. And if they do that, ignore them. They're not worth it. Yep. We spend way too much time in our lives trying to
that.
I don't care who it is. It could be your family members. It could be
a lot of times
friends. It could be just acquaintances, people that you're thrown into the mix with in some school or something.
Right.
And instead of focusing on what makes us happy, even to a certain extent, doing that where we're almost isolating ourselves, but finding things that we enjoy, we try so hard to get other people to either like what we like or to fit in with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look back on it and we go, wow, why did I do that?
Right.
Why did I waste my time, those 3 or 4 or 6 years, if you want to call middle school in there, of my life when I could have been doing things that I really enjoyed?
Exactly.
Who cares if I like chess or if I like, Star Wars or who cares? If that's what I like, that's what I like.
Exactly.
This isn't about being cool, and that's the thing that Andy tries to point out. He goes, if I wanted to be cool, I wouldn't put on clown makeup and go on stage and do what I do. That's not to be cool.
Yeah.
That's to do what I want to do.
Yeah, because I want to.
Right. Because you hear the idiots will say, well, without their makeup, they're heinous or they're ugly or whatever. But the truth is, without their makeup, they're a lot better looking. They're 5 good-looking dudes,
yeah.
And Andy's a hell of a lot better looking with all that theatrical stage makeup on and everything. He doesn't put it on and look pretty.
Yeah.
He doesn't. That's not what his point is. His point. He doesn't walk around the stage trying to look like Robert Plant either.
Right.
He's more like a lead singer version of Gene Simmons or something,
Uh-huh.
He's 6'2". He hulks around the stage. He doesn't prance around and do little pouty lips and everything else. He kind of looks like a monster sometimes. But that's his whole thing. He's not doing it because he's trying to be cool. He's doing it because that's how he feels when he's on stage. That's what he likes.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a combination of his interest in superheroes and Batman and all that stuff, and also his rock heroes, guys like Alice Cooper and Motley Crue and Kiss.
Right, exactly.
He feels like he's a part of that when he's on stage doing his thing with his band. So, it's the fan base, to me, it's so undervalued by the rock media, what the BVB fans have done. They don't even get how what used to be a 20s to 30s whatever scene that was dying a really slow and brutal death has been revived by, and I'm talking about hard rock. I'm not talking about the bands from Warped Tour and all the rest. I'm talking about hard rock, arena rock, whatever you want to call it. How these kids have literally put a shot of adrenaline into that nobody has seen in 20 years.
You're right.
They are literally the future of hard rock and heavy metal. The kids that found Black Veil Brides, because some of those kids could have been listening to Justin Bieber right before that, or the Jonas Brothers, or whatever.
Right.
And instead of picking some hip-hop, rap, or pop star that doesn't even play their own music and everything, whatever, they picked a rock band.
Right.
And they didn't pick a rock band that's like Rescheduling or whatever they're called, which isn't really a rock band, or Cobra Starship or any of that shit.
Oh, God.
Or Mumford and Sons, or I'm not ripping on those bands, but I'm saying the rock band they picked is it's a real rock band.
Right, unquestionable.
And they don't, and also it's not G-rated either.
No.
I give the parents a lot of credit that let their kids listen or watch this stuff, because the parents apparently trust their kids, and they also realize that they're the parents and that they do parenting. They don't, but because Andy's just motherfucker about every other sense. I wish I could get him to stop it when he's on stage, but he does. And parents, they don't care. I mean, I'm not saying they don't care. I'm sure I care. So I'm not saying people don't care, but it's not G-rated is my point. And kids, I'm talking about 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. They love it.
Yep.
When I was a kid and I discovered Kiss or Aerosmith or even before that Alice Cooper, I was 10, 11 years, 12 years old, and I liked it. When I would go to a show, whether it be Led Zeppelin or Aerosmith, the Black Sabbath, whatever, nobody was telling me, "Oh, you're too young to be here. Get the hell out of here."
Yeah.
This is only, this is only for whatever. It was like, "Hey, little dude, want a toke?"
Yeah, exactly.
That was a different time period.
Yeah.
But it was a community. There wasn't separate things that people would they point in the direction of, well, this is metal deathcore, this is metalcore, this is glam, this is what. It was all just rock and roll. I could see Molly Hatchet one day and go see Billy Idol the next day. I didn't really care. It was rock.
Exactly.
So,
it wasn't country.
Yeah, so the fans, in a nutshell, they don't get they really don't get the credit that they deserve. This is, to me, is an amazing. It's not just about Black Veil Brides. It's about rock and hard rock actually becoming popular, culturally relevant again because of the BVB Army.
Exactly.
The other point that I'd make in that is that people ask me all the time, well, why are they the BVB Army? Kiss had the Kiss Army, blah, 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 blah. And the reason for that is because that's what they started calling themselves.
Right.
The fans started calling themselves the BVB Army. And what is BVB's primary message? Don't let anybody else tell you what you should like or what you should do. So why the hell would you say to somebody, no, this has already got an army, let's call ourselves something else?
Yeah.
You go, okay, that's what you want to call yourself, then that's what you are.
And that's awesome.
And the hell with anybody else that says, well, the Kiss has already got an army, or whatever. We don't really give a shit.
Right.
We don't really care about that.
Yeah.
Nothing against Kiss, but we don't really concern ourselves. The band doesn't concern, the fans don't concern themselves with what somebody else would think about it when we decide what we're going to do. We just do what we want to do. And if you don't like it, then don't like the band.
Exactly.
Move on.
Go back to your Jefferson or whatever.
Yeah.
Silver Starship. Yeah, I was about to say the wrong band. I was going to ask if you feel like your life has changed as the band has grown.
I'm a lot busier.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean, I kind of took on this whole fan relations coordinator type of thing.
Uh-huh.
I used to manage the band. I mean, initially they didn't have anybody else to do that, and I was really involved with every little detail with Andy on how things were going to go and what we were going to do. When he moved to LA and then they got management by Mercenary with Glasgow and everything, my role changed to I became kind of the go-to person when it came to fan relations. And that included communicating not only with fans via the internet, but also, regular mail. So Amy and I probably get on average 40 or 50 letters or messages every week from fans, most of them to Andy.
Right.
And then we kind of have a standing policy that anybody who writes to the band as a letter, fan letter, or sends art or whatever, that we save up all the stuff. We give it to Andy when he's home or he has time to see it. It's hard to bring bags and bags of letters and gifts and everything else with us and then give it to them on tour because what are they going to do with it? They don't have room in their tour bus for all that stuff and everything. So we try to give it to them when they're in Cincinnati or when, that kind of stuff. Luckily, most of it's for Andy, so we don't have to, physically, or it's for BVB, so Andy looks at all of that.
Right.
But we made it a standing policy that when anybody sends something, that they will get a reply, which I don't know of any other rock band in the world, let alone like kind of running in and out of your house, but we send autographed pictures of Andy. He signs, like, we'll go to Eastern Kentucky on Tuesday, and he'll sign a couple hundred autographed pictures, and we'll put in DVD stickers, and I hand sign or a note to everybody. Amy and I both do, and then we send it to them, thanking them, telling them they got their letter, and we'll make sure that the band sees their their letter or their art or whatever it is, and then we send it back to them. So and I don't know anybody else that every time now, if it's the same person 100 times,
you're going to notice.
we're not going to just keep sending them an autograph each and every time, you know. But I try to do is if it's somebody like that, I try to contact them via email or Twitter or something and say, hey, I got it, thanks a lot, or whatever. But I mean, the first time somebody sends us something, we reply, and it's probably on average, like I said, 6 or 7 or 8 letters a day, every single day. Sometimes it's like 15 or 20. Yeah. I guess around the holidays it gets to be even more. When Andy got hurt,
I was just going to say, I bet you were flooded. Did people really send?
It just shows you how great the kids are.
Yeah.
And how great their parents are. I when I go to shows and I stand in, and I'm there and I see these parents with these kids and they're standing in line to meet the band and everything else. You know, I go up and I talk to them and tell them how much I appreciate that, because I used to do the same things with Andy, and it made a big difference in my relationship with him. It's something that we still look back on.
Right.
You know, the fact that people are willing to do that. It also makes me really proud to know that a lot of parents like Black Veil Brides, because it reminds them and brings them back to a day when theatrical rock or hard rock that you could actually had a hook and melody and chorus and everything else was out there.
Right.
You know, kids have to get used to this now. They don't spend half their song talking like Cookie Monster and then sing in the background. You know,
exactly.
They sing or they have a chorus or whatever. That's the vast majority of the song. And even when Andy was coming up, he would be on the bill with 4 other bands, and I can pretty much guarantee you that the other 4 bands would all sound like Cookie Monster, and they would say, and this song is called such and such, and then you'd be like, how would you know?
Exactly.
How would you know what this song was called, what the lyrics were, what it was about? How would you even know when it ended if you didn't say something? Because it just sounded like the other song. It was just like these incredibly fast, speedy guitar parts, and then somebody sounded like Cookie Monster for 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
Oh, I used to have to say to people who would come to the shows that were friends of ours, I'd have to say, hey, hang in there. Just hang in there. I know that this is brutal, but just wait. They actually, when Black Veil Bride gets up there, they actually sing, and you can actually tell different songs, one from the other. And people would laugh, and then when the show would be over, they'd go, you're right.
I'm glad they hung around, huh?
Yeah, so... I mean, I always knew what Andy wanted to do with BVB was going to be, had definitely a potential and could work. Not just from a message or from the way his lyrics and everything, but also musically. I just knew that there was a lack of big choruses and anthemic rock that was out there, and that would be something that if you take Andy's interest in the Misfits and the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, the Damned, all that kind of stuff, and you combine that with his love for Motley Crue and Kiss and whatever, and I'd say that's probably what Black Veil Brides is. It's a combination of those things. Right. With some more contemporary bands, I want to say more contemporary, but bands like Avenged Sevenfold and Metallica also have influences obviously on Jake and Jinx and how they write and stuff like that. I mean, I think Jinx and Jake are probably in seventh heaven right now. Watching and being able to watch Avenged Sevenfold every night from the side of the stage and everything. That's probably really exciting for them. I'm not saying Andy's not excited by it, but he's got different personality. You know, he's not. Andy wants his band to become the biggest in the world. So.
Yeah, you guys are okay, but
no, he loves them. Don't get me wrong. It's exciting it's exciting for all of them, but it's just simply a matter of, like, I remember we were at Rock and Range, and Jake and Jinx were just like it was like a religious experience for them to be there and I kind of was chuckling about it, and Andy was very nice about it. He said, hey, they love those guys, man. They're like, look up to them, big time and everything. Now Ashley's a little older. He's the Motley Crue guy, you know. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. And I think Andy was more excited by hanging out with Tim Armstrong of Rancid and meeting him and everything than he would be the guys from Avenged Sevenfold.
Okay.
You know, it's not that he doesn't like him. He just kind of, I think to Andy, they're more contemporaries, even though they're older. He looks at them that way, and he would look at somebody like Alice Cooper like God.
Yeah.
When Alice Cooper said, and he was talking about how they're doing things the right way and everything else.
Yeah.
That was a big moment for Andy.
I bet it was.
Really excited about that because he's looking at that guy like he started it all, in Andy's opinion.
Yeah.
So, still waiting for Gene Simmons or Paul Stanley to weigh in. That would be nice, but they have yet to say a word. But we have got Sebastian Bach, Nikki Sixx,
right.
Nick Morris, Dee Snider, Ozzy Osbourne,
Sebastian Bach.
Right. Let's see who else. Alice Cooper, and Billy Idol. They've all said positive things about the band and everything else, and I'm probably missing a couple of people there, but it would be nice if Gene would weigh in and his blessing, as it were. Not that Eddie cares about that, but I would like it.
Yeah.
You know, I have a Kiss tattoo on my right arm and everything. I've been a huge fan for years and years, and probably spent thousands and thousands of dollars on Kiss memorabilia, and it would be nice if they would acknowledge that Black Veil Brides is the rightful heirs to the throne.
A very good way to put it.
Well, that's the way Nikki put it, really. I mean, that's kind of what Nikki was saying. Nikki Sixx was saying, and Mick, the same thing. These guys are they're legitimate new wave, they're legitimate next generation of what we wanted to do. And some of those guys like Dee and Sebastian have said, man, we've been, there was like this gap, and they were waiting for somebody else to come up that had the balls to do this.
Right.
And, it was almost like 80s rock had this stigma to it, and that people looked on it as like kind of a clown metal, when in fact, if it weren't for Motley Crue and Rat and Poison and Wasp and Cinderella and down the line, there would have been 50% of the stuff that you saw on MTV.
Oh, you're
that
exactly
was in rotation, and it was in rotation heavily back when MTV started, and all the way through up to the 1990s. I mean, that was I used to love MTV then.
They actually
because
played music.
I could see Looks That Kill once an hour. We didn't have DVD players or any of that shit. The only way I was going to see them was that.
Yeah.
And I got to see Motley Crue videos a lot. I got to see Ozzy. I got to see all these hard rock bands, and it was like really, really cool. But now, 30 years, 20-some years later, Eddie Trunk is still talking to the same people that he was talking to 30 years ago.
Exactly.
He apparently doesn't realize that there's been other bands that have existed in the interim.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we kind of got to overcome. Somebody asked if Black Veil Brides would ever be on that metal show, and I was like, the only time you'll ever see them on that metal show is if Sebastian or Nikki get on wearing one of their T-shirts. Right,
and Sebastian did.
Eddie won't want to talk about them. He only wants to talk to his old geezer friends that he knows. And God love them, they're legends of rock, but you can't really claim that you're all things hard rock and heavy metal, which is their tagline, if you completely ignore. I'm not even just talking about Black Veil Brides. I'm talking about, why don't they have Avenged Sevenfold on there? Why don't they have guys from Slipknot on there? Why don't they? I mean, those are veteran bands, if you will. They've been around for 10 years. But Black Veil Brides has only been around for a couple of years, but they're right now the thing in hard rock, whether people like it or not, whether the metalheads or the guys that loved going to shows where it was only dudes and they could all run sweatily into each other in some kind of semi-erotic homosexual or whatever you want to call it. Which would be the worst thing for them, because they would their favorite word to use is faggot all the time. But when you think about it, the fact that they're out in a crowd with only guys slamming into each other repeatedly is remotely homoerotic. I mean, it's not like something you point out, but if you kind of think about it, it is. And they're the first ones to call Black Veil Brides faggots or this or that. That's kind of their thing. I was at a show in Cincinnati, and the dude was riding on another. He was on another guy's shoulders. And Cincinnati's always bad. Every time that we come to Cincinnati, the band comes to Cincinnati or plays in the area, it's never good. Just because there's a lot of people who are left here who are resentful for the fact that Andy left and went to LA and made it. And we were at a show in Cincinnati at the Warped Tour, and these dudes were one dude on the other guy's shoulders, and they were flipping which is really weird to me, the concept of going to a show and flipping people off. Why would you just not go?
Yeah.
And these guys are flipping Andy off and calling him a faggot or whatever. And he handled it about as well as you could handle it, I thought, because he said, he actually stopped and he said, now you're sitting on the other guy's shoulder and your nutsack is about half an inch away from his face. And you're calling me a faggot. You know, which I thought was actually probably the best way you could handle it with humor.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, what he's done in the past.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
But he's had a lot of practice. That's the one thing is that, you know, he's only 20 and he hasn't even hit 21 yet, but he's been dealing with hecklers since the very first time he played.
That's true.
I mean, how many people do you know their first show in a band? Now, this was actually his second show. Because he was in a band. He did one show with a band that he called Biersack, which eventually, like, wound up becoming Black Veil Brides. But but the first time that he ever played Black Veil Brides, they played at the Bogarts in Cincinnati, which is kind of a rock club, probably holds about 1,500. It was a Battle of the Bands show. So this is like high school bands, high school rock bands. And when he gets on stage, before he can even get on stage, now you gotta remember, he's 15 years old. There's a contingent of punk rock, what we call straight edge or Nazi youth or whatever you want to call them, boys who are chanting, "Andy Sick sucks my dick." And I'm on the floor with a videotape of this. I'm only probably about 20, 30 feet away from me at the most. And my first inclination is to go over there and beat some ass. But
of course,
I realized that this is probably, you know, as weird as it sounds, it was kind of cool because holy shit, these guys all know who he is.
Exactly.
He's a 15-year-old kid playing his first show ever with this band, and they're all like, focused on him. So he comes out, and this was before I started doing like the fog and the other stuff because they didn't really have like stage stuff on this particular show. He runs to the front of the stage. He looks right at this group that's chanting this. He gives them like this, you know, his Andy face, his crazy monster face, grabs his crotch, flips him off, and then just does the show. And he's 15, and that's when I knew everything was going to be fine. Yeah. I knew as a dad or as a parent that none of this was going to make him a shrinking violet. All it was going to do was it was going to embolden him and make him more cocky and confident and a better rocker because he was going to deal with it that way. He wasn't going to be like, what's going on, or try to win them over. He was basically saying, I don't really give a shit what you say. Right. And that's kind of, you know, so that was the very first show that he played. So all the while, he's playing these shows, and you know, some shows that they play, they're not the headliner. Most of the shows that they play, they have been, which is kind of weird for a band this young. Yeah. But some shows they're not. And fans of other bands are put off, and their band is the headliner, and Black Veil Brides has twice as many fans as anybody else at these shows. Yeah. They hate that. And when they played with Birthday Massacre, which is a Canadian band, they were like, what the fuck is going on here? How come this band is, you know, they have all these kids here. These kids are all wearing makeup and they're all screaming. And this is my band. I'm a 27-year-old and I want to have my band in a cold audience to play it in front of 100 people. That's what I want. Well, now we got 1,000 people here and 900 of them for Black Veil Brides. I hate Black Veil Brides. Yeah, I'm going to try to ruin it for everybody else. And so they would, you know, they would do shit. And Andy, being Andy, he would call them out. Yeah. He wouldn't just sit there, and I don't know if that came from his friendship with Will from Aiden, because I think that pretty much started when they toured with Aiden, because there would be some Aiden fans or some other, you know, I think Motionless in White was on that tour too, and the Motionless in White fans hated Black Veil Brides, and the Aiden fans hated Black Veil Brides, but Will, who was, he was touring as William Control. He and Nick were touring as William Control. They weren't touring as Aiden on this particular tour. They would call the people out too. Good. You go, why the fuck are you doing Black Veil Brides? He goes, they're the most real band that I've come across, the most genuine guys, everything else. Why don't you, he goes, you're going to boo and get the fuck out. He's telling these people. Awesome. So Andy's watching all this stuff. Andy would join him on stage and everything else. And I think it helped Andy. I think it really showed him that, you know, that the stage is yours, brother. Do what you know.
They paid
do what
money
you
to
think
see
you need
you.
to do, because there's that punk rock element to what Andy does that was kind of missing. He was becoming, Paul Stanley, people over here, people over there, that kind of stuff, and less of, the edginess that he had. So he kind of brought that back. So you see a lot of videos where Andy's challenging people. There was a guy who knocked a kid over in, I want to say it was in Massachusetts. I can't remember specifically or it was in New England. I can't remember specifically where. And they were doing that stupid mosh pit, whacking people. Some of these guys, they use it as an excuse to just push people down from behind.
Yes.
Like, I wasn't doing anything. I was just moshing. Well, you're doing it with your friends, and they're all participating. That's one thing. But to slam somebody down from behind that's watching the show, that's another thing. And Andy sees this from the stage, and he jumps off the stage, and he goes after the guy, and he whacks him with the microphone. And as weird as that is, and they didn't even have security in those days. Traveling with them like they do now. But as weird as it is to say, I was really proud of him because he did it to protect the fan.
Right.
He did it to protect some girl who was like 12 or 13 years old or 14, whatever she was, who was at the show, who was wearing Black Veil Brides and makeup and wanted to see the show.
Right.
He said to people during these shows, and they play with other punk bands. Like, they'll play with drugs or with somebody else, with Asking Alexandria, and the entire time all those bands are doing, even 80, they're encouraging people to have giant mosh pits and slam into each other. Well, Andy will never say that. He will never say, why? Because he thinks it's stupid.
Yeah, it is. I think so too.
But not that he's ever going to say anything about it.
Well, yeah.
Because he doesn't want to discourage the fans that do like to do that. He's just not going to encourage it because he knows that a large group of their audience is there to actually watch the band.
Right.
Not
act like a fool.
What I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not mandatory.
Yeah.
Where in some bands they act like if you're not doing it, you're not showing proper respect for the band.
Yeah.
Andy's like, if you're not watching us, you're not.
That would make more sense to me.
I think he'd be the first to say that his primary interest is that everybody watch the band. And not slam into each other and cause damage and injury and all the rest of that. But it's going to happen. When you play Warped Tour, that's going to happen. Right. It's not like they don't look out and see these people slamming into each other and they're not amused by it.
Yeah.
People want to do it in a pit, and they're all participating in it. Then it's one thing, but it's just the guys that use that as an opportunity to slam into other people that don't even know it's coming. That's when it's a problem.
Exactly. You're very vocal again on Twitter, speaking with the kids who ask you questions or just support overall for kids who are bullied or they're in less than good situations or whatever. I just always wanted to ask you, what if you could say one thing to not necessarily the kid that's bullied, but to the bully himself or herself. What would you say to a person who might not even realize the impact that they might have on that other kid?
Well, I never really thought of it from the perspective of the bully. I've never been with a bully. So, my whole life I was, as growing up, I was one of those kids who either tried to be, my thing is always about inclusion and encouragement. I'm always talking about that it's so much better, and we live in a much better world if we try to include people or encourage others. I don't really see the advantage that anybody has of discouraging somebody or trying to hurt somebody else's opportunity for happiness. It's a confusing thing for me. I guess I would be confused about the bully mentality because I never really understood it. I understand that certain people are how do I say this? They are not confident in themselves. They don't really have that self-esteem issue, and so they try to utilize humiliation cynicism and physicality to make up for that.
Right.
As you become an adult, you can see through those kind of people, and it becomes less and less prevalent because most people realize it's just a facade. But when you're younger, you don't necessarily know that, so sometimes people can get away with that. But I will say this, I think Blackville Brides and the fans of BVB Army have discovered that they don't have to necessarily put up with that.
Right.
That it may be in the form of ignoring it. It may be in the form of avoiding those type of situations. We never advocate violence. It's never been something that Blackville Brides has ever said. But on the other hand, I'm not my son or I or the guys in the band wouldn't be disappointed in a fan who stood up for themselves.
Right.
Nobody would. We want people to be confident. We want them to be happy with who they are, what they are, and we want other fans to be encouraging. One of the things is that everybody can tell somebody else, "Oh, this isn't very good." And I even get kids who send me artwork that's unbelievably great,
I've seen some
and they'll
of those.
say, because they've been brought up to believe that you should be humble and or put yourself down, kind of as a defense mechanism before you send something. And they'll say, "Well, it's not very good, but what do you think?"
Yeah.
So I'm thinking to myself, "Are you kidding me?
Right.
It's not very good. It's unbelievable. It's great." And it's amazing how many of these kids are like, "Really? You think so?" I'm thinking, wow, where's the encouragement?
Exactly.
Where's the inclusion? Where's the trying to bring people up? One of the things that I notice is that some people act like if they give a compliment to somebody else or they show support, that somehow, some way, it's like a vampire that loses their soul.
Right.
There's only so many compliments I can put out there, and then I lose my, a portion of my soul. They're unlimited. And if they're heartfelt and if they're sincere, and even if your motivation is to try to make somebody feel good or happy, then that's a hell of a good thing.
Right.
So I don't really understand the bully mentality. I get the general concept that most of these people are just miserable, and they're trying to make other people miserable.
Yeah.
But I'm all about inclusion instead of exclusion. I'm about encouragement instead of discouragement. And I think that's kind of a consistent message that I try to send to the kids that I contact or I talk with, is that, you have each other. And even if you live in different cities, you now know that there are a lot of people like you who want to be good people. See, that's the other thing about Blackville Brides is that, our fans don't go to the shows, the band's fans don't go to the shows and boo the other bands.
No.
They don't hassle anybody else or call them names or anything like that. That's one of the other things I'm really, really proud about, is that BVB fans just go to support BVB. And they take abuse and crap from other people for doing that, for putting on the makeup, for wearing the shirt, for whatever. They have to constantly deal with that. But yet, they know in their hearts that what they're doing, what they're a part of is good and right and positive. More than anything else, positive. And I would rather be part of something that's positive than a bunch of cynical, miserable SOBs who want to try to bring everybody else down and make them as miserable as they are. It's the same thing with when Andy's, as a band. It's easy to tear Blackville Brides down. It's easy. I mean, some of these bands, these contemporary bands that say all kinds of crap about them, they're idiots.
Yeah.
They're idiots because why would you want to even mention Blackville Brides in an interview or say anything negative about them? Because you're just giving them more publicity.
Exactly.
I love it when it's in a German magazine or a Dutch magazine or something like that. Because the only thing I see in the interview is Blackville Bride. I can't read. I can't read the rest. Now, I know that's not the purpose of it. The magazine is intended for the other people that actually read the language. But I crack up when I see Blackville Brides and something from, and I'm not going to mention the name of the band because I don't want to give them any publicity. But that cracks me up. I don't understand that. And then I think to myself, okay, it's because you're not happy. You're not happy with yourself. You're not happy with the way things are going for you, and you're trying to figure out a way to bring somebody else down.
Right.
Instead of going to the studio or working twice as hard to make your fans or whatever.
You
And
discredit.
to that, I would say, if that's the case, then Black Veil Brides definitely is tapped into a market that was in dire need of being tapped into, and that is a band that girls and young girls and other, teens of all ages. I think it's kind of overblown because I talk to kids of freaking all the way from their early teens all the way up until their mid-20s or whatever. College kids all the time contact me about stickers for the bands and everything else. So I think that's kind of overplayed. Yeah. But it's an easy excuse for these other bands to say that Black Veil Brides only attracts preteens or teenage girls or whatever.
Yeah.
That's their excuse. Well, at least our fans are adults, or at least our fans are this, or at least I never really understood that, like, one fan in whatever age group it is more important than another, but they've decided that if you're not 18, you don't count.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I say all the time. I love young people. Sometimes it's the grown-ups who are, they're hard to deal with. But I love kids, and I worked with kids for a while, and that's what I would tell them, well, you're people too, and tried to treat them like they were little people and not just, little drooling whatever's running around, bothering people.
Right, exactly. I mean, like I said, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, I used to go see Ted Nugent or Aerosmith or Kiss or whoever the hell it was when I was 12 years old. Nobody told me that I was too young to do that.
Yeah.
And those were hard rock bands, Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Nobody in the audience, nobody when I went was saying to me, "What are you doing here, little kid?"
Yeah.
I was there watching the same band they were watching. If anything, they were like, "That's cool."
Right.
But now it's like this. These lines are drawn, and this is that, and everything else, and then people are so dumb that they actually think that like Black Veil Brides is somehow the rock version of the Jonas Brothers.
Yeah.
They say stupid shit like that, and you're like, have you even listened to them?
Yeah.
Have you watched any of their videos or listened to them? But if you did, you'd know they're a hard rock band.
Yeah.
Their drummers beating the shit out of the drums, and their guitarists are unbelievable. You don't get guitar deals and signature guitars and everything else from BT Rich if you can't play.
Yeah.
These guys are great musicians. It irritates the hell out of me when people act like, Jinx and Jake are two of the best young guitarists going out there right now.
I agree.
And CeCe, he hasn't had the exposure that they have because he hasn't been in the band as long, but I would venture to guess that within the next 2 or 3 years, people will be talking about him like they were talking about Tommy Lee.
Uh-huh.
So
definitely.
it's one of those things where you, for me, it's, the defending the band part just kind of gets kind of silly because there's other bands that say all that shit. Even bands that say crap about them, and then they're at Warped Tour and they meet them and they go watch them and everything, and they go, "Oh man, you guys are a lot better than I thought you were. I'm really sorry about the stuff we said."
Yeah.
You're like, well, why'd you say it in the first freaking place?
Exactly.
Because you thought that your audience of teenage boys or adult men or whatever that are a bunch of meatheads sitting in their parents' house on the computer in the basement or whatever, trolling away would like that.
Yeah.
Don't you be better than that. And that's unfortunately that's the problem. But then again, I think it's beneficial to the band, and it's actually kind of balances it out when all of those rock legends that they looked up to are the ones who are saying, "We love these guys."
Yeah.
And if you have Alice Cooper on one side saying that you're great, and you have some guy from some contemporary band saying that you suck,
yeah,
what are you going to put more stock in?
Right. I think Alice Cooper knows more what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's if one comment was made by one and one comment was made by the other, I think I would just focus on the one that was made by Alice Cooper. I don't think I'd worry about what whatever. Once again, I never make any specific comments or remarks about other bands because I think it's foolish when they say specifically things about Andy or about Black Veil Brides. They just show their ignorance, and that's their choice. They probably should have a management team or somebody working with them tell them not to do that. But maybe their management team believes that. Maybe they think that it's edgy and cool and whatever.
Yeah.
And the guy from that one band was on this. It's just some stupid. It's a rock voting poll for some radio station.
Yeah.
And he gets on and he tweets that Andy's a faggot or something. It's like, really? That's, what are you going to say about that? You're a grown man.
Right.
You know, I heard that this guy's like in his 30s or something, and I'm thinking,
really?
Why would you do that? Unless you're drunk.
Yeah.
The guys from one of his bands, apparently they were drunk. They found a video of BB and they put it on their own Facebook site and said, the worst band in the world. Well, why would you do that?
I don't know.
What's the point of that other than you're an idiot?
Well, yeah, there's no point.
And if you're an idiot, why the hell would I care what you say about me?
Well, yeah, it just beats down your own credibility in every way.
Yeah, completely does.
Gosh. I wanted to mention just real quick, you mentioned earlier when Andy got hurt. I think that most fans completely understood them canceling the show, the tour, fall tour.
The fall tour? You mean the most recent one? Yeah, when he broke his nose?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what he did? I don't know if that ever came up, but what he did was, they were playing a show in Luxembourg, and they have drum riser, which, you know, they usually have. But most of the drum risers have a front to them, as in there's a board on all four sides, or at least on three of the sides, and, you know, that's what the drum riser is. Or they have a curtain over them. And this one had no sides.
Mm.
So he's rolling around doing his thing, and he's thinking he's going to pop himself up. He's going to get up real fast.
Yeah.
But it's time to sing. And he doesn't realize that he's partially underneath the drum riser.
Oh.
And he pops up straight into the edge of it, or the bottom of it, and breaks his nose.
Oh, that had to hurt so bad.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Well, he broke it in, like, he's right down the middle and everything. It was, like, really, really bad. When he played the show in London, came up the stage, and he had, like, he was hemorrhaging. He had blood coming out and everything. And they had an EMT, or they had, I don't know, whatever they call a medic, on site, and they basically said to him, you know, you're risking further, it won't heal, and you're risking further damage to it. So they made the decision they weren't going to play those shows. But they're coming back to Europe anyway. I mean, they're going to do all those shows. They reschedule them all. They've got all rescheduled dates. So
right.
It's disappointing, you know, but shit happens. When you play the kind of physical show that they play, and the stage is different night after night. They don't have their own stage, so you're not exactly sure where things are. And Andy's a risk taker. He always has been. And maybe he'll stop taking as many risks as he has because of the broken bones and everything.
Yeah.
But he still does it. I've seen him crawl up balconies, you know, like opera balconies and everything, and hang and crawl up and sing from up inside of those things at clubs. And, you know, there's shows that I've been to where I would run over there and stand underneath and think, well, if you're going to break something, it's going to be me.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm not going to let you take a fall from 20 feet.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know where security was when he was in L.A. at that show. I would have thought somebody would have come underneath him and made sure that he was okay, at least break his fall.
You would think.
But I don't know that would have mattered at that point because he fell directly onto the stage and then onto the floor. But
yeah,
you know, it's one of those things where probably people don't assume that he's going to do something that crazy and try to jump, so they don't even think about going over there. I mean, I guess that would be what it was at that time. But yeah, I mean, it's anybody that would say that he had a broken friggin' nose,
exactly,
and he could barely breathe, and he played the show in London on, you know, the 29th because it was a showcase show for them that they wanted to play. It was important, and he did it. And so I don't know what is this, some fallback or something you've heard.
Well, we were going to go to that one. They were coming here to Arizona.
Right.
Yeah. But was it heartbreaking, even though they were exhausted and he was hurt and everything? Did it still break his heart to have to cancel shows?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah, see, that's what we
chose to believe. Never want to cancel shows, ever.
Yeah.
He wants, I mean, some of the places that they had to cancel, they are huge.
Yeah.
Denver. They couldn't play Denver because their damn bus broke down and Warped Tour, and then they had to cancel this past one for Denver. That was terrible for them. I mean, and not only just because they love the fans and the fans show up for them and everything, But let's face it, they do well. They sell out every time they go there.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were excited about playing with Aiden and with with Ronnie's band, with Falling
Reverse, yeah.
Yeah, they were. I mean, that was going to be a great tour. It was going to basically lead to them going out to onto the Avenged Sevenfold tour. But you got two things at play there. You got they've been on the road. They've been in Europe. They're sick as some of them are not feeling well. There's a huge climate change when they went over there, and they're not and they're kind of cooped up. They're not doing their normal regular thing. When you go to another country, or in this case, countries, they're in mainland Europe as well. It's a completely different animal. The food's not the same. The hotels are different. If they stay in the hotels, some places it's great. They're in London, it's awesome. But when you're in a little farmhouse in in Zurich or something like that, that's where you're staying, or you're in Luxembourg or in France or wherever you are. It's a different thing. So yeah, when he broke his nose, there was no question that they weren't going to be able to do that. Do those shows, because he needed to recuperate. He's still not completely 100%. He still has some sinus issues or whatever, but the show must go on, as they say. They felt bad, of course they did. I don't care which one of the shows. They had some special things that they had planned. They had VIPs that were sold out. A lot of these shows were sold out, these VIP tickets.
Yeah, we had some.
And everything. So yeah, they don't want to cancel it, but they played 300, shows in 2 years.
Well, yeah.
Well, a year and a half, really.
That's crazy.
That's going to happen. There's going to be shows that are canceled. They're not the kind of band that does a tour, and then maybe next year they'll do a tour.
Yeah.
They're doing a tour all the time.
Right. Like every month or something.
Right. So there's a lot. I mean, when they're not touring, they're making records. When they're not making records, they're making videos.
Right.
When they're not making videos, they're out back on tour.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. They're constantly working, and it probably was the best thing for everybody that they actually took it 2 weeks. The only problem is that they're having to reschedule all those shows, and for the kids that had the tickets and the VIPs, they'll have two options. They can either get a full refund, which is understandable, or they can hang on to their tickets and their VIPs, and they'll be good for the rescheduled show.
Yeah. Well, that's what we weren't sure. Would we just keep them or not, or what? So, but I guess they're going to refund it.
They are.
Yeah.
Every single one of those cities is going to be rescheduled.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's going to be for Falling in Reverse and Aiden.
Right.
But it'll be Black Veil Brides and whoever the supporting acts will be.
Yeah. Well, that's what my daughter was. She totally understood. Of course, their health is more important. It has to come first. And she was still a little bummed that we weren't going to be going to the show.
Well, of course. I don't blame anybody. In fact, that's one I've said to a number of people.
Yeah.
If you weren't bummed or you weren't disappointed, that's when Black Veil Brides has a problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's how
nobody can negate somebody's disappointment.
Yeah.
Or should try to negate somebody's disappointment. Because I saw people saying, well, whatever, you need to be less selfish or whatever. And I always think, no. Just like when somebody says, you shouldn't like Black Veil Brides because of the way they look. No, you should like Black Veil Brides for whatever damn reason you want.
Right.
I don't care whether you like them because you think Andy's cute or Cece's cute or whatever. Whatever brought you to the band in the first place, eventually you're going to find out that they are a hell of a good rock band.
Exactly.
But if what brought you to the band in the first place is that you think Andy's good looking or you think Ashley's good looking, whatever it is. I don't really care what it is. And that's why when other kids try to dictate how it is to be a fan or what you should do to be a fan or whatever.
You're not a fan because you don't do this.
A lot of times I'll step in and say, it's not really. That's really not our place as fans. We're not supposed to be telling other people how they should enjoy something.
Yeah.
They can enjoy it whatever way they want. The fact of the matter is that all of us are enjoying the same thing. And that's what makes it better. It makes it special. It makes it more fun. For me, it's fun to go to the shows in these different cities and run into kids that I communicate with on a regular basis via the internet.
On Twitter. That would just be
Twitter,
so neat.
MySpace, whatever. Email the kids or letters. We get these letters from kids all over. And then a kid will run up to me and say, I'm such and such, they'll use their Twitter name or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, it's awesome. I feel like every time we go to a show that I'm just meeting more people that, meeting them, but I kind of feel like I know them.
Right.
So that's fun. I mean, for me, it's kind of a weird thing because people want to get their pictures taken with me and everything at shows, and that's kind of a bizarre thing. At first, I would say, oh, you don't want to do that, whatever. But then you'd see kids that would call us, it'd be like, okay, I had the nerve to come up and ask you.
Yeah.
And I got this camera, and my friends are here and everything, and now you're gonna, be like that. They don't get that you're just trying to say, well, you don't really own man.
Yeah. They're like, but I do want to.
Now, this is something I have to tell you. When we're at, sometimes, I'll be at these things, and then kids will be asking me to take a picture or whatever, and then their parents will be there, and I'll be standing there with my arm around some kid, and their parents are looking at, are like running over there, like, who's this pedo?
Why are they
what's
talking
going on
to
over here? They have no clue.
Yeah.
That I'm Andy's dad or whatever, and they think, what the hell, like, this guy put his arm around my kid for? He's got to be 40, 50 years old, whatever. So we were at some signings, and, kids would be coming up and asking me and want to talk to me and everything else. And you can just kind of get to see the parents look like, what's going on over here? So, plus I have all those tattoos and everything, so.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing, is somebody will say, are you Andy's dad? Because I got all these Black Veil Brides tattoos on my arm, and they're mostly of Andy.
Uh-huh.
And I think to myself, if I was a 48-year-old man with all these Black Veil Brides tattoos all over my arms, and most of them are dedicated to this one person, and I wasn't Andy's dad,
that would be creepy.
It would be creepy. It would be really damn creepy is what it would be. So, I better be Andy's dad. I mean,
better not be someone else out there that looks like this.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like one of those things where you go, who would do that? A 20-something-year-old kid. I mean, if you do that, that's bizarre. So.
I was going to ask about the tour now, but you kind of answered that already. About just the fact
they're opening. I mean, they're literally opening a show every night.
Yeah.
It's them. I've been asking Alexandria, Hollywood Undead, and then Avenged Sevenfold. So, awesome. But it's exciting. They're playing. It's a big stage, and they're playing arenas, which this is their first time in the States playing in arenas. They're bigger in the UK. It's weird, but they're more respected. They're talked about more. They're in the covers of magazines more. Mm-hmm. And they're a bigger commodity, I guess you could say, in the UK than they are here in the States.
And why do you think that is? We don't
have a rock culture here like they do.
Okay.
They're like, if you look at Kerrang, they cover all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you look at here in the States, it's like AP only has pop punk bands or punk bands.
Yeah.
Revolver only has metal bands.
That's true.
Spin only has like alt or pop punk bands or pop bands. The rock magazines here and the rock media here are all bifurcated. And in the UK, Kerrang or Rock Beat or Big Cheese, which are NME, mm-hmm. they can call rock, and they across the board.
Just everything there, yeah.
Right. So they don't. It's the same thing in other European countries. Like they're huge in Germany and now in Sweden and some of these other places, Switzerland. They're big because they don't identify Black Veil Brides as a this or that band. They just look at them as a rock band.
Right. Well, that's how it should be.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the way it used to be.
Yeah.
When you picked up back in the day, when you picked up Cream or Circus or Hit Parade or any of those magazines, rock magazines, when we were young, they didn't really, you could see Boston in the same album or the same magazine as you would see Kiss or AC/DC or whatever. It wasn't really, it wasn't, this is this kind of a band. It was just a rock band. Bob Seger was in the same magazines as I don't know, just Ted Nugent. I mean, they didn't didn't really matter. You go from one page to the next, just was rock and roll.
Yeah. The new EPs. Are there any projections? Like, do you think they're gonna? Are they talking about how many they may sell on that? I was just curious if they.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they really know. I know that, like I said, that there's going to be a push.
Yeah.
By the distributor for that, because they really want to try to get the fans used to the concept of the idea of buying the BVB digitally as well, but they have to make it beneficial for BVB's fans who like a visual piece to be a part of what they buy. That's why people buy physical copies of BVB CDs, because they come with booklets and pictures of the band and all the lyrics and posters and that kind of stuff. And most bands don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you're lucky to have anything and stuff.
And I always go back to this, but when I was a kid, I'd open up an album cover and I'd be like, okay, what goodies are in here?
Exactly.
You know, Kiss have a little love gun that I can use, and they would have posters in there and everything else. I mean, that was like expected almost. That's what you'd want. So BVB tries to bring a lot of that back to what they do.
That's really cool. Well, I'm out of questions.
Okay.
And
so
I didn't mean to take up your
whole... more, I would assume.
Pardon me?
I said I answered your questions and more, I would assume.
Yeah, you did, but that's okay.
More than you would ever want to know.
Well, I didn't mean to take up your whole morning, but I'm glad you talked with us this long.
I enjoy it, and you know, I like it when people want to talk to me about the history of the band. I mean, I'm not the guy to do an interview about anything other than just the message or the general excitement about the fans. I think I'm probably the best person to talk to if you want to talk about what the fans mean and the relationship that they have with the band, because I'm the one who communicates with them the most.
Yeah.
Probably even more so than the band, because they don't, you know, they're a rolling internet thing, which is not an easy thing to do. You don't have to actually have access to all of that every day like I do. But you know, I other than Andy, I would be the person who knows the most about the history of the band.
Yeah. Well, was going to just say something, and I can edit this out. I just wanted to tell you, we were talking about having courage and stuff earlier. Just last night, I'm always telling Laren, she's a pretty outgoing kid, but she still gets nervous or scared to talk to people sometimes. And I just told her last night regarding something she wanted to do but was too nervous to do it, and I said, I'm interviewing Andy's dad tomorrow morning because I asked. You know, and she just looked at me like, you're right. Oh, sorry, you have a little dog barking.
You gotta ask. That's right. That's the only way it's gonna happen. It's kind of like, you know, Andy went to LA when he was 6 days after he was 18, and everybody was like, oh my God, you gotta be nuts or whatever. And it's like, well, if I don't take a chance, it's not gonna happen, because it wasn't happening in Cincinnati.
Right.
And so he goes to LA and he made things happen for him. And then once it happens, you know, just like it is for your kid, once you do something and you show you can do it, there are so many more opportunities that open up for you.
Exactly.
Just getting past the initial doing it in the first place.
Right.
No matter what it is, if you start and you do it and you find out that it's not that daunting of a task, and you just keep working on it, you can pretty much do anything you want to do.
And our dad used to tell us a lot of times, you know, you learn more from being told no than you do from being told yes.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
You appreciate the yeses a lot more, that's for certain.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to let you go and enjoy your Saturday.